Good morning, guys. Happy Friday. So this morning we're going to talk about having like higher blood glucose levels, even on keto, low carb, carnivore, because just because you're following that way of eating, that style of eating, you guys can still be doing things, triggering some higher, level readings that maybe you don't realize that you're doing. So simple tweaks to like diet, food, exercise, or just lifestyle can make a big difference. So some of the big things throughout my journey, and from client experiences that I didn't realize that I was doing were things like working out too much. Because remember, like too much is not always a good thing. Fasting too much, not getting enough quality sleep, over caffeinating was a big thing. Or maybe my meals were too large. Maybe I was trying to force like OMAD which is 1 meal a day, and spiking my insulin levels really high. Maybe I was trying to eat foods that I didn't necessarily digest and absorb properly. So eating trigger foods, like for me, I don't digest pork well. I noticed when I ate a lot of pork, my blood glucose levels were higher. My digestion was kind of wonky. So these are things that you guys need to pay attention to. And I know a lot of you don't like to track food, but gathering data, like tracking blood glucose levels, whether it's via a continuous glucose monitor like NutriSense, which that's in the link in my Instagram bio. You guys can have a discount code there. I used it for a while, gained a ton of information. Keto Mojo, like there's a ton of different cheap devices out there that you guys can use to gain and track data. Track your food, that'll help you figure out how many calories you're eating and kind of where your macro ratios are. So as far as like low carb and macros, like maybe you're consuming too much protein. Oftentimes this can raise your glucose levels. Maybe you need to add more fat in your diet. There's a lot of people experimenting with that right now. There's no magical set of macros. You guys have to experiment and figure out what works for you. For me, like I listen to my body. I don't question what I'm craving. If I'm craving more fat, I increase the fat in my diet and I'll lower my protein just a little bit. So that's going to look like adding butter, beef tallow, bacon fat, choosing fattier cuts of meat. So like less chicken, less lean seafood, because a lot of you that initially when you start, you're used to eating leaner cuts of meat, especially if you were eating higher carbohydrates. You're going to have to switch that way of thinking and choose, think like fat isn't bad. You're going to have to increase fat in your diet, because when you're pulling your carbohydrates, you got to increase your calories up to what they should be via fats. All right, protein typically should stay consistent. There's no right, wrong way to do things. You guys just need to choose your own adventure. Maybe it's as simple as you guys need to get more quality sleep. Experiment. As far as like meal timing goes, maybe you're one who's fasting too much. Maybe you need to increase to smaller, more frequent meals throughout the day to balance blood sugar. Maybe the opposite end of the spectrum, if you've been consuming carbohydrates for a long period of time, maybe you're one that's due for a low carb reset. And again, macro amounts and ratios are going to be different for everyone. Work with a coach or practitioner if you don't, not sure what to do. And try a low carb reset for 2 weeks or 30 days and see how you do to kind of try to reset that. Some other things that I see, like overly fasting is a big thing. If your blood glucose levels are really high in the mornings, you're one that maybe you need to incorporate some carbohydrates into your diet, especially if you're an avid exerciser or a performance athlete. Maybe you need to raise calories up in general. You're not eating enough food. So there's a million different ways to do it. Experiment, have fun, guys. I'm always here if you have any